Okay, the thing this time around, going to be brushing up against a really complex and powerful component, adaptive release. So this is just a brush, just one thing about adaptive release, but expect to see this topic revisited in other things for other weeks. All right, so here's the scenario. I have some information that I want students to have looked at before they get to the next piece of follow-up information, all right? Now you would say, how on earth am I going to accomplish that? That's where adaptive release comes in. So let's bring up our controls so we can actually work with things. There's going to be two parts to the way that we're using adaptive release here. The first is that we're going to require that students say that they have read this piece of information. And only after they say that will they get this follow-up information. Okay? So that first step is called turning on the review status for the first item. You just change from disabled to enabled, and now review status is turned on for that first item. What that looks like, to turn off edit mode real quick here, students would come along, they'd see, here's the entry, here's this little button that says mark reviewed. Now they can go in, they can look at this, or they could lie through their teeth for some ungodly reason and claim that they read something they didn't, and hit the button. Now right now, the button doesn't do anything other than toggle over to review. You might find that useful because it shows up in places like the performance dashboard and other places in the course that students will have claimed that they've reviewed the item. They can also toggle that off again to say they haven't reviewed it. So it's, just an opt-in, opt-out thing on whether or not a student claims they've read something. Now, to add some teeth to that, we would, I'm going to get my controls back here with edit mode on, go to the item that I want to only appear once they say they've reviewed the first one. Okay, so that's the real key for adaptive release is you apply the rule to the thing that you want to have appear. And I'll say adaptive release. And as I mentioned, there's lots of other ways that you can control adaptive release, but for this one, this thing, we're going to be using the review status. All right, so I say the review status based on this item. All right, now it shows in that content area, the lorem ipsum entry. That's what the review status criteria will be. We submit that, and if I hadn't already turned on review status, it would turn it on for me, but I like to make it two separate steps. Okay, so here's the adaptive release rule on this follow-up information item, and then the lorem ipsum with review status turned on. Let's kick off edit mode here and see how that looks. If a student came to this entry, they'd see this, they'd presumably read it, and then say they read it, and then they'd gain access to the next piece of information. And if you wanted to, you could even daisy chain these things together, reviewing and then reviewing this and then having something else appear. And that's just the tiniest little scratch of the surface of what you can do with adaptive release, and in this case, triggering an adaptive release rule based on review status. So let your mind go wild with where you might want to use this in your course.